Hello and welcome to the fourth and final part of our video series designed to share insight into the selection, seeding, and bracketing process for the Division I Men's Basketball Championship. In this video, we're going to show how the bracket comes together. Before we show you how teams are bracketed, using software developed and maintained by the NCAA's IT staff, there are several bracketing principles by which the committee must abide. Before we dive into those principles, here is a general summary of the four regions of the bracket. There are 16 seeds in each of the four regions. Teams on each seed line are generally close to being equal. For example, teams seeded 5th in their respective regions are ranked 21, 22, 23, and 24 on the overall seed list, which you'll recall is the committee's ranking of the 68 tournament teams. There are 4 groups within each region, which are grouped together to form pairings for first and second round matchups. One group is seeds 1, 8, 9, and 16. In the first round, the 1 seed plays the 16, and the 8 seed plays the 9. The winners of those games play in the second round. The other 3 groups work the same. They include seeds 4 versus 13, and 5 versus 12, 2 versus 15, and 7 versus 10, and 3 versus 14, and 6 versus 11. Each of these groups is assigned to the same first and second round site. Note, it is possible for a first and second round site to have 2 groups on the same seed lines, though they feed into different regions. Here are some of the important bracketing principles. Each of the first 4 teams selected from a conference shall be placed in different regions if they are seated on the first 4 lines. Teams from the same conference shall not meet prior to the regional final if they played each other 3 or more times during the regular season and conference tournament. Teams from the same conference shall not meet prior to the regional semifinals if they played each other twice during the regular season and conference tournament. Teams from the same conference may play each other as early as the second round if they played no more than once during the regular season and conference tournament. Any principle can be relaxed if 2 or more teams from the same conference are among the last 4 large seeded teams participating in the first 4. To recognize the demonstrated quality of such teams, the committee shall not place teams seated on the first 4 lines at a potential home crowd disadvantage in the first round. The last 4 large teams on the overall seed list, as well as teams seeded 65 through 68, will be paired to compete in the first 4 games on Tuesday and Wednesday following the announcement of the field. If allowed, the last at-large team on the seed list will be paired with the second to last at-large team on the seed list. The other first 4 games will consist of the third to last at-large team on the seed list playing the fourth to last at-large team on the seed list, as well as seed 65 versus 66 and seed 67 versus 68. Teams will remain in or as close to their areas of natural interest as possible, as determined by mileage from campus to the venue. A team moved out of its natural area will be placed in the next closest region to the extent possible. If 2 teams from the same natural region are in contention for the same bracket position, the team ranked higher in the seed list shall remain in its natural region. A team will not be permitted to play in any facility in which it has played more than 3 games during its season, not including exhibitions and conference postseason tournaments. A team may be moved up or down 1 line or, in extraordinary circumstances, 2 lines from its true seed line. For example, a team can be moved from the 13 seed line to the 12 seed line or from a 12 seed line to a 13 seed line when it is placed in the bracket if necessary to meet the principles. The committee begins the process of placing teams into the bracket by taking the overall number 1 team on their seed list and placing it into the region in which that school has requested. Only the overall number 1 team is afforded this privilege. Generally speaking, that team will select the region that is within the closest geographic proximity to its campus. The overall number 2 seed is placed in its closest remaining regional site as the top seed in that region, followed by the overall number 3 seed being assigned to its closest regional site. The 4th of the number 1 seeds gets the region that remains vacant. The committee then places the number 2 seeds, teams ranked 5 through 8 on the overall seed list, on the bracket using the same geographic principles. However, movement can take place based on other principles that take precedent over geography. First, the overall number 5 seed, as in the best of the 2 seeds, can't be placed within the same region as the overall number 1 seed. In addition, the top 4 teams from a conference have to be placed in separate regions. The committee then seeds the 4 number 3 seeds, teams ranked 9 through 12 on the overall seed list, and the 4 number 4 teams, seeds ranked 13 through 16, using the same principles. After the top 4 seed lines have been assigned, the committee will review the relative strengths of the regions by adding the true seed numbers in each region to determine if any severe numerical imbalance exists. Generally, no more than 5 points should separate the lowest and the highest total. Once the committee has those 16 teams placed in their respective regions, it begins the process of assigning first and second round sites. The committee would start with the overall number 1 seed and assign them to the closest site. Once that takes place, we know that the number 8, 9, and 16 seeds in that region will be in the same city. Again, this is because of the aforementioned groups within each region. Then the committee would assign a first and second round site for the second number 1 seed. Again, the 8, 9, and 16 seeds in that region will join that team at that site. This would be followed by the committee assigning the third of the number 1 seeds to its closest first and second round site. It's acceptable to have 2 number 1 seeds playing at the same site. If it happens, it means that no other teams can be assigned to that site because each of the 8 first and second round sites host 8 teams, and 8 have already been assigned there. The 4th number 1 would then be placed at the closest site to complete the process of assigning first and second round locations for the number 1 seeds. The committee continues this process in true seed order. The grouping concept applies to each of the 4 lines. When cities are assigned to the quartet of teams that are the number 2 seeds, that site also gets a 7, 10, and a 15 seed. When the number 3 seeds are assigned, those sites also get a 6, 11, and a 14 seed. And when the number 4 seeds are assigned, those sites also get a 5, 12, and a 13 seed. Once the committee begins the process of bracketing the 5 through 16 seeds, they review which cities are available in each of the 4 regions. This is done in order of the overall seed list. At most, there are 4 cities from which to assign teams. However, various bracketing principles may cause a change. Because of these principles, teams sometimes have to travel great distances. For example, a team could be forced to go to a city farther away to avoid playing a conference rival. There are additional considerations for the committee. These aren't principles that the group must abide by, but still the committee will try to avoid rematches of non-conference games taking place in the first 4 or first round. Additionally, the committee will try to even avoid non-conference rematches in the second round. The committee will also try to avoid having a team move out of its natural region in consecutive years, and they also try to avoid first-round rematches from the prior year's tournament. That's a lot to digest, isn't it? The committee goes to great lengths to ensure it's abiding by all these principles so that it can set up the most competitively balanced tournament as possible. Now let's show you how it works using the software. The first thing you'll notice is this looks nothing like a bracket. All 68 teams are placed in these 4 regions before the system spits out the actual bracket. The software helps ensure principles aren't being violated, provides the mileage for every school to its possible tournament destination to ensure as many schools are traveling the shortest distance possible, and alerts the committee of other potential pitfalls, such as BYU potentially playing at a Sunday site. So let's show you the bracketing process in action. What you see initially are 4 columns, 1 for each region. The 2 Thursday-Saturday regions, the West in Los Angeles and the South in Louisville in this example, are on the left. The 2 Friday-Sunday regions, Kansas City in the Midwest and Washington, D.C. in the East, are on the right. Since we are seeding the 1 line, those rows are shaded in green, meaning the first team is eligible to go to any of those regions. You will also see at the bottom of the screen the overall seed list. In this example, the number 1 team is Duke. Recall that the overall number 1 is the only team that gets to choose its preferred regional site, as well as its first and second round site. For now, however, we are focused on regional placement. For the sake of this discussion, we will assume Duke elected to go to its closest regional site, which is Washington, D.C. You can tell which one is closest by looking at the mileage from each campus, just to the right of the name of each regional city. Once we click on the overall number 2 team, in this case Virginia, the mileage will change to reflect how far each regional city is from Charlottesville. As you can see, the South Regional in Louisville is the closest site. North Carolina is the next team, and between the two available regionals, Kansas City is the closest to Chapel Hill. The final team on the one line is Gonzaga, and the only available site is Anaheim, which works out well in this case since that's the closest site to Spokane anyway. Note, however, had the fourth number one team been an East Coast school, it still would have had to go to Anaheim because it was the only remaining regional site. Also notice that to the right of each school name is the value of the team's placement on the overall seed list. For example, you will see a 4 next to Gonzaga because the Zags are fourth on the committee's ranking of the 68 teams. Additionally, you will see a cumulative total of the seed list numbers on each row just below the 16 line. This is used exclusively for the first 4 lines. The committee's goal is to make sure that the difference between these totals after 4 lines is not greater than 5. The process of bracketing the number 2 seeds begins by looking at Tennessee. Since the Volunteers are the first SEC school to be bracketed, and since the overall number 1 seed is not in the closest regional to Knoxville, they can go to their closest regional. That site is Louisville. Michigan State goes to Washington, D.C., since that is the closest available regional to East Lansing. Kentucky gets assigned to Kansas City, and Michigan is left to join Gonzaga out in Anaheim since it's the only available spot. Houston kicks off things on the 3 line, and the closest spot for the Cougars is Kansas City. That's followed by Texas Tech going to the closest site, which is Anaheim. But here's where things get sticky, and keep in mind this happens regularly each year. The 11th team on the seed list is LSU. Once we click on the school name, you will notice that the 3 line in the South Regional is red. This is because Tennessee is in that region, and there's a principal violation here. Remember, all teams from the same conference have to go into separate regions if they are seated on the top 4 lines. Since the only available regional for LSU is Washington, D.C., the committee would move the Tigers to the East Regional. Purdue would then finish out the 3 line by going to the South Regional. The committee then starts bracketing the number 4 seeds, beginning with Kansas. Again, you will notice the red in the West because of fellow Big 12 school already being in that region. It isn't the closest site anyway, so the Jayhawks go to their closest site, which is Kansas City. On the next spot, however, Florida State is blocked by Virginia in the South, which is the Seminoles' closest regional. In fact, the second closest regional is also blocked by an ACC team as Duke is in the East. Therefore, Florida State has to go to the West. Kansas State can go to its closest regional in Louisville, and Virginia Tech is eligible to go to the East because the Hokies are the 5th ACC team, so they don't have to be separated from being in the same regional with Duke. At this point, now that the committee is through 4 lines, they will check the regional balance. You will see the highest total is 36, and the lowest is 32. This is optimal balance, so in this case, the committee does not need to make any adjustments. The next step is to go back to the top of the seed list and assign the first and second round sites. A box with all of those sites, the mileage from each campus, and whether they are a Thursday, Saturday, or Friday, Sunday site pops up. Once we click on Duke, the closest of those opening weekend sites is shown. In this case, it's Columbia, South Carolina. Watch when Duke gets assigned there. The 8, 9, and 16 lines in that regional automatically populate. The next team is Virginia. And once again, Columbia is the closest site. And again, the 8, 9, and 16 lines in the South Regional populate. This also means that Columbia is full. You will see that 8 teams have been assigned there, and so there isn't room for any other teams to be sent there. This includes the very next team, which is North Carolina. The Tar Heels have to go to the next closest first and second round site, which is Columbus, Ohio. Gonzaga then gets assigned to its closest site, which is Salt Lake City. The committee then assigns first weekend sites for the 2 seeds, starting with Tennessee. The Vols have to go to their second closest site, which is Columbus. You will also notice that when you assign a site to a 2 seed, the 7, 10, and 15 seeds automatically populate in that region. That's because Tennessee will play the 15 seed, with the winner playing the 7 versus 10 game winner in the second round, also in Columbus. From there, Michigan State goes to its closest available site, which is Des Moines. Kentucky is next, and the Wildcats are relatively equal distance to a few cities. The committee could exercise some flexibility and assign Kentucky to Jacksonville. With the mileage so close, the committee would look at time zones and the natural geographic footprint. Michigan would then go to Des Moines. As the committee begins making assignments for the 3-line, they will assign Houston to Tulsa. This means the 6, 11, and 14 seeds in that region also go to Tulsa. The same goes for Texas Tech, which also has Tulsa as its closest available first and second round site. LSU's closest available site is Jacksonville, and Purdue's closest one is Hartford. On the 4-line, the only available sites are Salt Lake, Hartford, and San Jose. Kansas's closest site is Salt Lake. Florida State's closest site is Hartford, and that leaves both Kansas State and Virginia Tech to go to San Jose. Now the committee can start bracketing the 5 seeds. The first team is Marquette, and the committee's charge is to send them to the closest of the first and second round sites available on the 5-line. As you can see, the options are Hartford in the West, Salt Lake in the Midwest, and San Jose in both the East and the South. Once we click on Marquette, the mileage pops up and in this case demonstrates that Hartford is the closest site. It's also important to note that each line is green. Soon the committee will run into a red line, which means a principal would be violated to send a team to that site. Auburn is the next team, and the Tigers get sent to Salt Lake City. That's followed by Wisconsin. With both available sites being San Jose, the committee would then look at the regional site and go to the closest one, which is Louisville. That means the Badgers go to the south. Finally, Mississippi State is left to go to San Jose in the East Regional. This process repeats itself with each seed line. Villanova can go to Hartford, Maryland can go to Jacksonville, Buffalo can go to Tulsa in the Midwest, and that leaves Iowa State to go to Tulsa in the West. But the red line tells the committee there is a problem. In this case, Iowa State is a 6 seed in the same regional as fellow Big 12 conference member Texas Tech is a 3 seed. That would set up a second-round matchup between the two teams, and since those schools played more than once, it is a violation of the bracketing principles. To address this, the committee would go back a spot and instead assign Buffalo to Tulsa, but now in the West Regional, while Iowa State would go to the Midwest. Another principal violation shows up as we start the 7-line. Louisville is the host institution for the South Regional. That means the Cardinals are not allowed to play in that regional, so they may not go to their closest available first and second round, which is Columbus. Louisville then has to go to its second closest site, which is Des Moines in the east. Nevada can go to Des Moines in the west. Cincinnati can go to Columbus in the south, and Wofford is left to go to Jacksonville. VCU's closest spot is Columbia in the east, while Syracuse is eligible to go to Columbus in the Midwest. Ole Miss went to Columbia in the south, and Utah State was sent to Salt Lake City. The other thing you'll notice on the 9-line is a blue box that simply alerts the committee that Ole Miss and Baylor had played in the regular season, which is how Baylor ended up in the same region as Syracuse. On the 10-line, Iowa is blocked from playing in Des Moines because of potential second-round matchups with Big Ten rivals Michigan and Michigan State. That left the Hawkeyes to go to Columbus. Seton Hall went to Jacksonville, Minnesota went to Des Moines, and Florida went to Des Moines in the West. For the 11 line, Ohio State was sent to Tulsa. At this point, we're in what's known as First Four territory, meaning the committee has to seed the last 4 at-large teams on its seed list. In this case, Belmont and Temple are at 42 and 43 on the seed list. Teams 44 and 46, St. Mary's and Murray State, are AQ teams, so they are not in the first 4. The last 2 at-large teams are Arizona State at 45 and St. John's at 47. The committee paired up Belmont and Temple and assigned them to Jacksonville, which was a Thursday-Saturday site. This means that the Belmont-Temple first 4 game would be played on Tuesday. It also means the committee needs a Friday-Sunday site for the winner of Arizona State-St. John's to advance to, and in this case, Tulsa was available in the West region. St. Mary's is the next team to be bracketed. With only one spot available on the 11 line, the Gales are sent to Hartford. On the 12 line, Murray State's closest site is Hartford. Oregon goes to San Jose in the south. New Mexico State goes to Salt Lake City, and Liberty is left with San Jose in the east. The 13 line features UC Irvine going to San Jose, Vermont going to Hartford, St. Louis going to Salt Lake City, and what would have been Northeastern going to San Jose in the east. However, since Northeastern played Virginia Tech in the regular season, the committee switched Northeastern and St. Louis to avoid that rematch. Another principle comes up as the committee seeds the 14 line. Yale's closest site is Hartford, but the committee will not put a team that has earned a top 4 seed at a potential home crowd disadvantage in the first round. So the decision was made to move Yale to Jacksonville. Old Dominion went to Hartford instead, followed by Georgia State going to Tulsa in the Midwest and Northern Kentucky going to the West Regional. On the 15 line, Montana was left in the West Regional, despite playing Michigan in a recent tournament, which is an additional consideration the committee could have factored in while bracketing this field. Colgate went to Columbus, Bradley went to Des Moines, and Abilene Christian went to Jacksonville. As the committee approaches the 16 seeds, they must keep in mind that 4 of these 6 teams must go to Dayton for the first 4. Specifically, it's the last 4 teams on the seed list, teams 65 through 68. They also know they need one pairing to go to a Thursday-Saturday first-round site, while the other must go to a Friday-Sunday site. To maximize those options, the committee will work backwards, and so in this case, the North Carolina Central North Dakota State winner was assigned to Columbia. And the Prairie View A&M Fairleigh Dickinson winner went to Salt Lake City. That left Gardner-Webb to go to Columbia and Iona to go to Columbus. It's worth mentioning that all of this work is to construct a single bracket. Depending on the schedule of games being played and a handful of conference championship games on Selection Sunday, the committee will need contingency brackets based on those results. It could mean an at-large team loses a tournament spot because a bid is stolen on Selection Sunday. It could mean a team moves up or down on the seed list, and any change in the sequence of teams could mean changes to the bracket. One year, the committee had 12 such contingent brackets. We hope you enjoyed this video series and gained some insight into the selection, seeding, and bracketing process for the Division I Men's Basketball Championship. Now that we have gone through the committee resources and covered the selecting, seeding, and bracketing process, we would love to get your feedback. Please email Joanne Scott at jlscott@ncaa.org with any comments or questions you might have.